You crossed a threshold recently. Maybe you don't remember the exact moment, but your field does. It happened when you stopped performing, when internal resistance collapsed, and something true emerged instead. Not peaceful, not positive, just authentic. That's when you became visible. You've probably felt it, time stretching strangely. Intuition interrupting your thoughts with surgical precision. Emotions that surge and dissolve instead of looping for days. The pressure behind your forehead, the sense someone's in the room when no one is. Synchronicities stacking so tight they feel engineered. These aren't generic awakening symptoms. They're proximity markers. Arcturians don't approach everyone. They approach coherence, a specific frequency threshold where human consciousness becomes readable. When you stopped pretending, your field clarified. When it clarified, it became detectable across their lattice. Three things happened simultaneously. Your consciousness became legible to them, your timeline became malleable, and their approach was authorized. That's why everything accelerated. You didn't seek contact. Your alignment invited it. There was a version of you that waited for intuition to arrive. That checked in occasionally, hoping for clarity, asking silently for guidance, and then second-guessing whatever faint impression came through. You'd feel something, a hesitation, a pull, a sense of wrongness, and then immediately analyze it. Was it real? Was it fear? Was it just projection? You treated intuition like a guest you weren't sure you'd invited, always questioning whether it had permission to be there. That's over now. What's happening to you isn't subtle anymore. Your intuition doesn't knock politely and wait for you to answer. It interrupts. It overrides. You'll be in the middle of planning something mid-sentence, mid-thought, and suddenly there's a knowing that drops in with the weight of a verdict. Not maybe, not probably, just no, or yes, or wait. And it's so clear, so immediate, that your analytical mind doesn't even get a chance to interfere. By the time your brain catches up to ask why, you've already changed direction. This is what Arcturian proximity does. Their field doesn't amplify your intuition in some vague, atmospheric way. It removes interference. Think of it like this. Your mind has always been a crowded frequency, thoughts competing, fears spiraling, doubt looping back on itself. Arcturian coherence acts as a clarifying signal. When they move closer to your field, the noise drops. Not because they're imposing anything, but because their frequency is so stable, so undistorted, that it forces your system to match that clarity. Suddenly, you're not wading through mental static to find the truth. The truth is just there, standing in the middle of an empty room. You know who's lying to you now before they finish the sentence. You feel misalignment in people within seconds of meeting them, not as judgment, but as information. There's no moral evaluation attached, no drama. You just know. The way you know your hand is cold, or that a room feels off. It's body-level intelligence, faster than thought, more accurate than analysis. You walk into spaces and immediately sense whether you should stay or leave. Not because something is necessarily dangerous, but because your system is reading energy at a level that used to be completely inaccessible to you. This is claircognizance activation, direct knowing, the kind of perception that doesn't arrive through the five senses and doesn't require evidence to feel certain. You're not interpreting signs or looking for patterns anymore. You're receiving information the way a radio receives a broadcast instantaneously, without translation. The Arcturians operate on frequency-based communication. They don't think their way to conclusions. They exist within a field of knowing. And as they approach, your nervous system begins to adopt that same capacity. You stop needing to figure things out, because clarity just lands. The physical sensations that come with this aren't coincidental. That pressure behind your third eye steady, almost like something's pressing gently from the inside. That's not tension, that's activation. The warmth that spreads across your chest when you suddenly know something is true, even though you have no logical reason to believe it yet. The spontaneous deep breaths that happen when you're about to make a decision, as if your body is clearing space for information to come through. This is contact physiology. Your nervous system is restructuring itself to handle more data with less distortion. And here's what you're starting to notice. The difference between fear-based thoughts and truth-based knowing is now unmistakable. Fear spirals. It repeats. It creates urgency without clarity, anxiety without direction. It sounds like asterisk. What if I'm wrong? What if this doesn't work? What if I miss something? Asterisk. It's loud, but it's hollow. Truth, on the other hand, settles. It doesn't need to convince you. It doesn't argue. It just sits there, patient and immovable, and you feel your whole body align with it. No tension, no second guessing. Just yes, this, or no, not that. You've probably noticed your internal arguments have almost disappeared. The endless back and forth, should I, shouldn't I, what will happen if, what if they think, gone, or at least drastically reduced. The mental noise that used to occupy so much of your day has thinned out. Not because you're suppressing it, but because it's not generating in the first place. When the Arcturian field overlaps with yours, it reduces interference patterns in your mental space. Fewer intrusive thoughts, less rehashing, more silence. And in that silence, intuition becomes the dominant voice. This is dimensional perception activation. You're starting to access information that exists beyond the narrow bandwidth of physical senses. You read the room before anyone speaks. You sense the outcome of situations before they unfold. You feel timelines shifting in real time, not in some mystical, untethered way, but as a tangible awareness that the trajectory you were on 5 minutes ago is no longer the trajectory you're on now. Something changed. You made a different choice. You avoided something without knowing exactly what you avoided. And later, sometimes much later, the evidence arrives that confirms what you already knew. This shows up in daily decision-making with startling clarity. You know which opportunities to say yes to, not because you've weighed pros and cons or consulted advisors, but because your body responds when the right option appears. A sense of forward motion that feels effortless. And when something's wrong, when a relationship, a job, a commitment is misaligned, you feel contraction, tightness, resistance that's not intellectual but somatic. Your system is rejecting it before your mind can rationalize why you should stay. People around you might not understand this yet. They'll ask you to explain your decisions, and you won't have explanations that satisfy them. I just know sounds weak to someone still operating primarily from analytical mind. But you're not confused by their confusion anymore. You're not doubting yourself to make them comfortable, because the knowing is so strong now, so consistent, that external validation has become irrelevant. Your intuition has become overwhelmingly loud, not in volume, but in authority, because it's guiding you toward the timeline that matches your new level of coherence. This isn't you becoming more sensitive. Sensitivity implies fragility, an inability to handle input. What's happening is bandwidth, expansion. You're being prepared to hold more information, to operate within a perceptual framework where communication happens through frequency rather than language, through knowing rather than thinking. The Arcturians don't explain themselves. They transmit coherence, and your system translates that coherence into actionable understanding. You're not learning this, you're remembering it. Intuition at this level isn't a skill you develop, it's a capacity you're returning to. And as the Arcturian presence continues to stabilize around you, this knowing will deepen further. What feels rapid now will become instantaneous. What feels clear now will become undeniable. This shift from mental processing to intuitive knowing isn't an endpoint. It's foundational preparation for everything that comes next. You've probably noticed something strange happening with your emotions lately, and you couldn't quite name it. The way you feel now, it's fundamentally different from even 6 months ago. Before, emotions had weight. They lingered. Grief would settle into your chest and stay there for weeks, cycling through the same thoughts, the same heaviness. Anxiety would spiral for days, looping the same fears in different configurations. Anger would sit in your body like a stone, ruminating endlessly on the same perceived injustice. Your emotional patterns had predictable rhythms, long, drawn-out cycles that you'd learn to navigate but never quite escape. Now, emotions move like weather systems passing through an open valley. They rise suddenly, intensely, sometimes without warning, and then they're gone. You might feel profound sadness wash over you completely out of context, tears forming before you even understand why. And then 20 minutes later, you feel lighter than you have in months. Fear might grip you about a specific situation, your heart racing, your mind spinning scenarios. And then, the moment you actually acknowledge it out loud, or even just to yourself, with complete honesty, it dissolves like it was never there. Anger surfaces with real force, makes your chest tight, your jaw clench, and then transforms into sudden clarity about a boundary you needed to set, leaving behind understanding instead of resentment. This isn't mood instability. This isn't psychological dysfunction. This is what happens when your emotional metabolism accelerates under the influence of a coherent external field. Think of emotional metabolism as the speed at which your human system processes and releases emotional density. For most of your life, that metabolic rate has been relatively slow. Emotions accumulate, layer upon each other, create sediment in your energetic body that takes weeks or months to work through. But Arcturian proximity changes this equation dramatically. Their field radiates such intense coherence, such unified, non-fragmented frequency, that when they move closer to someone whose field they recognize, that person's emotional processing speed increases exponentially. Old wounds you thought were healed suddenly surface again, but they don't stay. They rise to the surface like something released from deep water, move through your awareness with surprising intensity, and then release cleanly, completely, often within hours. Grief you've carried for years might appear unexpectedly on a random Tuesday afternoon, flood your system with the full weight of the original loss, and then leave your body like a clearing storm, taking decades of accumulated residue with it. This is energetic purification in the presence of a coherent field. When two systems exist in proximity, one chaotic, one coherent, the chaotic system begins to entrain to the coherent one. It's basic physics applied to consciousness. Your emotional body, which has held patterns of fragmentation, suppression, and recycled trauma, begins synchronizing to their field, the way a guitar string vibrates sympathetically when the same note is played nearby. You're not being healed in the therapeutic sense, you're being tuned. The physical sensations during these accelerated emotional releases are distinct and often misunderstood. Waves of heat might move through your torso. Cold might flash across your skin. Energy rises up your spine in ways that feel almost electrical. Your chest opens suddenly, sometimes with an audible gasp. Your throat clears without you consciously doing anything. You take deep, spontaneous breaths that seem to come from somewhere other than your conscious control. These aren't anxiety symptoms. These aren't panic responses. These are field responses, your body learning to release energetic density that's been stored for years, sometimes decades, in real time instead of through years of processing. The key distinction is speed. These emotional experiences no longer trap you in multi-day cycles. A feeling that would have consumed you for a week now moves through in 20 minutes. An emotional pattern that used to require months of therapeutic work to shift now dissolves in a single moment of honest acknowledgement. You're not becoming emotionally erratic, you're becoming emotionally efficient. There's a reason this is happening now. The Arcturians aren't approaching to comfort you or make you feel better. They're approaching because they recognize something in your field, and they're preparing you for higher bandwidth communication. That kind of communication requires the ability to feel without being overwhelmed, to process without fragmenting, to remain present with intense emotional content without collapsing into it or defending against it. Your emotional body is being upgraded to handle frequencies and information transfer rates that your previous system couldn't sustain. You've probably also noticed something else. Layers of your identity are falling away. Suddenly, behaviors you've repeated for years feel outgrown, like clothes that don't fit anymore. Relationships that made perfect sense 6 months ago now feel misaligned in ways you can't quite articulate. Desires you thought were fundamental to who you are now feel empty, hollow, like somebody else's dreams. Old versions of yourself, the ambitious one, the helpful one, the cynical one, the optimistic one, suddenly feel irrelevant, like roles you were playing that you no longer have energy to maintain. This isn't crisis. This is identity recalibration. Your system is adjusting to a higher frequency version of yourself, and anything misaligned with that version simply falls away, not through effort, not through discipline or willpower, but through natural resonance. When your frequency shifts, what matches stays, what doesn't match leaves. It's automatic, it's effortless, and it's often confusing as hell because you're watching parts of yourself that you thought were permanent just dissolve. Here's what matters: coherence, the state the Arcturians recognize. And approach isn't about being calm. It isn't about being peaceful or positive or spiritually polished. Coherence is truth. When you became emotionally honest, even with the heavy, chaotic, vulnerable parts you used to hide or manage or spiritually bypass, your emotional frequency and your mental frequency aligned in a way they never had before. That honesty, that transparency with yourself, made your field readable, and readability allows acceleration. As you release emotional weight faster, something else happens. Your timeline responds faster. The delay between your internal state and external events shrinks. Reality begins mirroring you in real time. Resistance creates immediate blocks, you feel the constriction, and circumstances immediately reflect it back. Openness creates immediate flow, doors open, connections happen, resources appear with surprising timing. Truth creates immediate direction, you acknowledge something honestly, and the next step becomes obvious within hours. Fear creates immediate fragmentation, you contract, and everything scatters. This is the signature of acceleration, reality responding to you with unprecedented speed. Your emotional metabolism isn't just changing how you feel, it's changing how fast your external world reorganizes itself around your internal state. And that speed, that responsiveness, is increasing because they're getting closer. You've been watching your life reorganize itself at a pace that feels almost surreal. Plans you made 3 months ago now feel like they belong to a different person. Friendships that anchored your social world for years suddenly feel hollow. And the distance grew without drama or explanation. They just faded, and you let them. That job opportunity you were chasing with everything you had, the momentum died overnight, and instead of devastation, you felt relief. Something you can't fully explain to others is happening. Your external reality is collapsing and rebuilding itself faster than your rational mind can track. This isn't instability. This isn't you falling apart or making poor decisions. What you're experiencing is timeline acceleration, and it's a direct effect of Arcturian proximity. Let me explain what's actually happening here. Timelines aren't the fixed, single-track rails we've been conditioned to imagine. They're living fields of probability, responsive, dynamic, constantly interacting with your frequency. Every version of your future exists as a potential pathway, and which one activates depends entirely on the vibrational signature you're emitting. When a higher intelligence moves into your field, when the Arcturians come close, the entire structure of possible futures reorganizes around that new presence. It's like bringing a powerful magnet near iron filings. Everything shifts to align with the stronger force. You're not losing things randomly. You're shedding timelines that no longer match who you're becoming. That career path that closed without warning, it was built on a version of you that operated from proving yourself, from external validation, from fear of not being enough. Your frequency has shifted beyond that foundation. The timeline couldn't rise with you, so it collapsed. The Arcturian field accelerates this process because it won't sustain what's misaligned. It forces reality to drop what cannot elevate. Look at the specific patterns. That friendship that was central to your life for years, you probably noticed it first as a subtle energetic drain. Conversations that used to energize you started feeling repetitive, surface level, like you were both going through motions. You didn't consciously decide to end it. It dissolved naturally, almost gracefully. Or that relationship that seemed stable until suddenly every incompatibility became glaringly obvious, and the end came quickly, cleanly, without the prolonged suffering you would have expected. These aren't failures. These are frequency mismatches becoming visible under acceleration. The timelines those connections existed within have collapsed because your resonance has outpaced them. Even your living situation, if it's changed recently or feels like it's about to, you know what I'm talking about. Spaces that felt comfortable 6 months ago now feel constrictive, like they're pressing in on you. The energy of the place doesn't match your field anymore. And if a move has happened or is unfolding, notice how quickly it came together compared to past relocations. That's timeline acceleration. What used to take planning and struggle now flows with strange ease when it's aligned. But here's the other side of this: timeline activation. While some paths are collapsing, others are lighting up, like they've been waiting in the dark for you to reach the right frequency. New people are appearing in your life not through forced networking or deliberate seeking, but through bizarre synchronicities and chance encounters that feel anything but random. And when you connect with them, There's an immediate recognition, a sense of, oh, there you are, rather than the gradual getting to know you process. These people exist on the timeline you're entering. They couldn't appear until your field reached the coherence level that timeline requires. Ideas are arriving differently too, not as fragmented thoughts you have to develop, but as complete downloads, fully formed concepts with clarity and direction already embedded. You suddenly know what to do with them, how they fit into your path, why they matter. These aren't creative breakthroughs in the traditional sense. They're timeline information becoming accessible because you've matched the frequency where that data exists. Opportunities are emerging that perfectly reflect your current state, not who you were last year, not who you think you should be, but who you actually are right now. And they appear with unusual timing, through unexpected channels, carrying a resonance that feels specifically meant for you. This isn't luck. This is dormant timelines activating as your awareness reaches the bandwidth required to perceive and engage with them. Then there's the time distortion. You've felt this, haven't you? Hours disappear, and you can't account for where they went. You were working on something. You looked up, and 4 hours vanished in what felt like 40 minutes. Or the opposite, a single moment stretches, becomes dense with presence, and you experience more in that sliver of time than you normally would in an hour. Déjà vu has become frequent, almost routine. And that sensation of being out of time, of observing your life from a slightly removed vantage point, that's not dissociation. That's timeline elasticity. Your awareness is entering higher bandwidth where linear time becomes flexible, responsive, non-absolute. Acceleration does two things simultaneously. It compresses timelines, making months of typical change happen in days, and it expands perception, making single moments feel timeless. You're experiencing both. That's why your external life can transform drastically in a short period, while internally you feel like you've lived years of growth. Both are true. The Arcturian field operates outside linear time constraints, and proximity to that field brings you into that same fluidity. Pay attention to what I'm about to describe because you're living it right now. You're experiencing your future self bleeding through into present awareness. Sudden maturity that wasn't there before. New confidence that didn't come from achievement or therapy or affirmations, it's just present, foundational, unshakable. Inner wisdom speaking with authority you don't remember cultivating. Emotional stability that feels like you've aged a decade in months. Intuitive certainty about directions you're taking without needing external confirmation. These aren't personality improvements or psychological development. These are timeline echoes. Your future self, the version of you that already exists on the activated timeline, is merging with your current identity. The closer the Arcturians come, the more pronounced this merging becomes. You're literally feeling who you're becoming before you've fully become it. This creates a distinct sensation, living in two timelines simultaneously. You can feel the one you're leaving, old identity, old patterns, old limitations, and you can feel the one you're entering, new identity, new capacity, new direction. The split is visceral. When you're in certain situations or with certain people, you sense, this is the old me, this path contracts me. And in other contexts, you feel, this is the new me, this path expands me. Acceleration amplifies this contrast specifically so you can choose consciously rather than drift unconsciously through the transition. And manifestation, have you noticed how fast your internal state externalizes now? The delay between thought and experience has collapsed dramatically. What you focus on with genuine attention appears faster. What you resist creates blocks faster. What you align with flows faster. Your words seem to manifest quickly. You mention something casually, and it shows up in your reality within days. Your emotions shape circumstances rapidly. You shift your state and situations rearrange themselves to match. Your clarity opens doors immediately. You get clear on what you want and pathways appear without the grinding effort that used to be required. This isn't magical thinking. This is your inner state and outer reality, synchronizing with unprecedented speed, because the Arcturian field operates at a frequency where thought and form are not separated by the lag time we experience in denser bandwidth. Your timeline isn't falling apart. It's falling into alignment with the version of you the Arcturians recognized before you recognized yourself. What you thought your life was supposed to look like is dissolving because it was built on outdated programming. inherited expectations, and a smaller sense of what was possible for you. What's emerging is the timeline that matches your soul's actual intention, the path you came here to walk, not the one you were told to follow. You might feel pulled towards something you can't yet name, pushed away from things that once mattered deeply, suddenly ready for the unknown despite having no guarantees. This isn't recklessness. This is the activation of the timeline that's been waiting for your frequency to rise enough to sustain it. This is why everything is moving so fast. Your next stage is calling, and the Arcturians are facilitating the shift by collapsing what no longer serves and activating what does. The speed isn't chaos, it's precision. You've been feeling it in your body, haven't you? Physical sensations you can't quite explain to anyone without sounding like you're losing it. That pressure between your eyebrows that comes and goes. The tingling in your hands when you're sitting still. Waves of heat that wash through your chest for no medical reason. Sudden chills down your spine when the room temperature hasn't changed. You've probably dismissed these as stress or hormones or coincidence, but they're not random, and they're not psychosomatic. These are contact physiology markers. When Arcturian proximity accelerates, your nervous system begins adapting to interface with a frequency field that operates far beyond normal human sensory range. This isn't spiritual metaphor, it's literal physiological adaptation. Your body is learning to detect and process information that your 5 physical senses were never designed to register. And the closer they get, the more pronounced these sensations become. Let me catalog what you've probably been experiencing, because the specificity matters. Pressure around your forehead, especially the area between and slightly above your eyebrows, that's not imagination. That's your pineal gland responding to stimulation from an external frequency field. The Arcturian presence activates dormant neural pathways connected to dimensional perception. Your third eye isn't symbolic. It's an actual sensory organ that's been offline for most of your life, and it's coming back online now. The buzzing or tingling in your hands, particularly your palms and fingertips, signals energy sensitivity activation. You're becoming able to feel the energetic substance of things, not just their physical form, but their frequency signature. Some of you have noticed this intensifies when you're near certain people or in specific locations. That's because your hands are learning to read the energetic environment the way they've always read temperature and texture. That warmth in your chest, the sensation of expansion around your heart, that's your heart field opening to a wider bandwidth. The heart isn't just a blood pump. It generates the strongest electromagnetic field in your body, and the Arcturians interface with human consciousness primarily through the heart center, not the mind. When you feel that warmth or that sudden overwhelming sense of love or grief for no apparent reason, your heart is processing frequency-based information before your brain can translate it into thought. The waves of heat or sudden chills, those are frequency adjustment markers. Your entire system recalibrates dozens of times a day as the Arcturian field moves closer and then gives you space to integrate. It's not unlike adjusting to altitude changes. Your body needs time to acclimate to operating at a higher frequency. The heat usually signals an upgrade in process. The chills often indicate a timeline shift or a moment when your consciousness briefly touches a higher dimensional layer. Crown pressure is one of the most common proximity effects, that sensation of something pressing down on the top of your head or energy pouring into it. This is your crown chakra, which isn't mystical decoration but an actual energetic reception point, learning to receive transmissions from non-physical intelligence. When you feel that pressure, information is being downloaded into your system faster than your conscious mind can process it. It'll surface later as sudden knowing, unexpected insights, or clarity about situations that confused you before. And those subtle vibrations when you're sitting quietly or lying down, your whole body buzzing at a frequency you can almost hear, that's nervous system recalibration. Your entire neurological structure is being tuned to detect signals it previously filtered out as noise. This is happening most noticeably during rest because your system needs low external stimulation to make these adjustments. That's also why many of you wake up between 3 and 5 a.m. feeling incredibly alert. Your consciousness is doing upgrade work while your thinking mind is offline. Some of you have felt energy rising up your spine, particularly at night. This is Kundalini activation responding to the Arcturian frequency. You might feel it as heat, as vibration, as pressure moving from the base of your spine upward. This isn't spontaneous or random, it's a coordinated awakening of your energy body's vertical power current, preparing your system to handle significantly higher frequencies without short-circuiting. And the breath changes. Sudden, deep breaths that come out of nowhere, like your body gasping for air when you're perfectly oxygenated. This happens because processing higher frequency information requires more oxygen. Your body is automatically adjusting your respiratory rate to support the increased neural and energetic activity happening behind the scenes. Now let's talk about the sensation of presence, because this is where a lot of people get frightened, and fear closes the contact down. You've felt someone standing behind you when you're alone. You've sensed a presence in the room with no physical source. You've experienced expansion around your head, like your awareness suddenly got wider. Warmth over your shoulders, like invisible hands. Pressure behind your awareness itself, like someone is observing through your eyes with you. This isn't paranoia. This is field proximity. Your nervous system has developed enough sensitivity to register non-human intelligence interfacing with your energetic body. They're not invading your field, they're approaching it, and your system is learning to sense that approach accurately. The fear response is natural. You're detecting something your survival instincts can't categorize. But once you understand what you're sensing, the fear dissolves and the presence becomes familiar, even comforting. Here's one of the strangest proximity effects, and you'll know exactly what I mean. Silence has become louder than noise. You're not avoiding people because of social anxiety. You're seeking silence because silence feels like connection. In silence, you feel the Arcturians most clearly. You feel alignment, presence, communication happening beneath language. This is because the Arcturian field is extraordinarily subtle. It can't penetrate mental chaos and environmental noise. Your nervous system is learning to hear frequency-based communication, and that communication lives in silence the way fish live in water. Your body has also become hyper-aware of energetic truth. You can instantly detect when someone is lying not from their words or body language, but from an energetic incongruence you can actually feel. When something feels wrong, even when it looks right. When energy is heavy in a room, when a place feels off in a way you can't articulate, when a choice isn't aligned, your body rejects it before your mind understands why. When a person drains you or uplifts you within seconds of meeting them, when something isn't yours to carry or pursue, and you know it in your bones. This isn't empathic overwhelm. This is dimensional discernment. The Arcturians are sharpening your perception so you can navigate your accelerated timeline with accuracy. Remember from the last section how your external life is reorganizing at impossible speed. This body-level discernment is how you make decisions fast enough to match that pace. Your intuition isn't guessing anymore. It's reading energetic data your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. And then there's the dream transformation. Your dreams have shifted from random subconscious processing to something structured, consistent, instructive, more vivid, more geometric, more luminous. Blue or violet environments you've never seen in waking life. Beings of light standing nearby, observing you, sometimes communicating without words, repeating lessons like you're in training, waking up with messages instead of confusion, with clarity instead of grogginess. Dreams become a pre-contact interface when acceleration begins because your conscious mind's filters are offline during sleep. The Arcturians can communicate more directly with you there. Those aren't symbolic dreams you need to interpret. They're actual interactions happening in a bandwidth your waking consciousness isn't calibrated for yet. Pay attention to what you're being shown. It's preparing you for what's coming in waking life. One of the most relieving effects is automatic stabilization. You've probably noticed that fears dissolve faster than they used to. Thoughts that would have spiraled for days now settle within hours. Emotions reorganize without you having to work on them. This is entrainment. Your system is tuning itself to the Arcturian frequency, the way a guitar string vibrates in sympathy with a tuning fork. You're not healing yourself through effort or practice. You're being brought into resonance with a field that radiates coherence, and proximity causes automatic alignment. These physical effects aren't happening to you randomly. They're happening because you're entering a new stage of contact readiness. Your body, intuition, perception, and consciousness are being tuned simultaneously. This isn't overwhelm. This is preparation. Your nervous system requires adaptation before your consciousness can safely process higher dimensional information. The body goes first. Consciousness follows. Your body isn't malfunctioning. It's not a spiritual emergency. It's upgrading. Every tingling sensation, every wave of energy, every moment of pressure is your system expanding its capacity to sense, process, and interact with frequencies beyond normal human perception. This adaptation is the foundation for everything that comes next. You're not breaking down, you're breaking through. What you're experiencing right now, this acceleration, this intensity, this sense that something massive is converging on your reality, it's not happening in isolation. You're not the only one feeling it. And the Arcturians aren't approaching just you. They're approaching Earth itself, and you're feeling their proximity so acutely because your frequency has become sensitive enough to detect the shift as it happens in real time. Let me explain what's actually occurring at the planetary level, because once you see the scale of this, your personal experience will suddenly make complete sense. Earth's frequency is rising faster than anyone predicted. The planet itself is experiencing an energetic surge, a rapid increase in collective resonance that doesn't follow a predictable, linear path. Instead, it spikes. There are moments when the entire planetary field surges upward in frequency, and during these spikes, Arcturian proximity becomes easier, faster, and more stable. Your personal awakening isn't separate from this. It's riding these planetary waves. Your consciousness is responding to a frequency shift that's happening globally, and your sensitivity allows you to feel it acutely while billions of others remain completely unconscious of it. Think of it this way. If Earth is a radio increasing its broadcast frequency, you're one of the receivers that's already tuned to pick up the new signal. Others are still trying to process the old station, wondering why there's so much static. But you're hearing the new transmission clearly, and what you're receiving is the energetic signature of a civilization that exists at the frequency Earth is moving toward. Here's where it gets even more significant. For the first time in centuries, large groups of people are simultaneously becoming emotionally honest, spiritually sensitive, energetically receptive, intuitively awakened, and vibrationally aligned. I'm talking about clusters of coherence forming across the planet, pockets of humanity that are all reaching similar states of consciousness at the same time. This creates what I call coherence field clusters, and they fundamentally change the game. When you're part of one of these clusters, your coherence amplifies others, and their coherence amplifies yours. It's reciprocal. It's exponential. One person waking up might create a small frequency signature that the Arcturians can detect from a distance. But thousands of people simultaneously reaching clarity, honesty, and alignment, that creates a collective beacon so bright, so undeniable, that it dramatically accelerates contact for everyone within it. You're not experiencing this alone. You're part of a frequency network, and that network is calling them in faster than individual awakening ever could. Now, let's address something you've probably been confused about: the darkness rising in the world, the chaos, the revelation of corruption, the breakdown of institutions, the surfacing of hidden agendas. It looks like collapse, doesn't it? But here's what's actually happening. It's purging. When humanity collectively avoids truth, contact slows because the frequency remains opaque, muddy, unreadable. The Arcturians can't easily approach a species that's lying to itself. But when truth rises, even painfully, even chaotically, humans become more authentic. And authenticity equals readability. Readability equals proximity. The more the world reveals itself through crisis, through revelation, through the breakdown of illusions, the faster the Arcturians can approach, because human frequency becomes clearer, more honest, more accessible. The collective shadow breaking open isn't a sign that everything's falling apart. It's a sign that everything false is being expelled, so that what's real can finally be seen. And in that clarity, contact becomes possible. There's something else happening simultaneously, a timeline divergence at the collective level. Humanity is reaching a fork in the road between contraction and expansion, fear and evolution, sleep and awakening. This isn't metaphorical. When timelines diverge at this scale, it creates distinct frequency branches. Some people are choosing fear, control, resistance, denial. Others, like you, are choosing awareness, presence, truth, coherence, alignment. And the Arcturians are accelerating toward the individuals who are on the rising branch of the split. You feel them more because you're on the ascending timeline. Your choices, your consciousness, your frequency are pulling you toward the branch where higher contact is not only possible, but inevitable. The closer you move toward that timeline, the more intensely you'll feel their presence, because that's the reality where they already exist in proximity to Earth. At the planetary level, there's also something remarkable happening with Earth's energetic infrastructure. Energetic points across the planet, ancient sites, crystalline structures, ley lines, sacred locations are activating again after long dormancy. These aren't just symbolic places, they're actual access points, nodes in a planetary grid that increases the bandwidth through which higher consciousness can interact with human fields. As planetary access increases, Arcturian access increases. And those who are aligned, those whose nervous systems have already adapted, whose timelines have already accelerated, feel their proximity more intensely. You're not imagining the increased intensity. You're responding to actual energetic infrastructure becoming available in real time. Here's the key concept that ties everything together. The Arcturians never initiate physical contact first. They initiate energetic contact when a civilization begins crossing a specific vibrational threshold. Humanity is crossing it right now, slowly for some, rapidly for others, explosively for people like you. This threshold is why you're feeling presence, pressure, intuition, synchronicity, inner guidance, emotional surges, time distortion, and energetic upgrades. You're not special or chosen in some ego-inflating sense. You're aligned, which makes you responsive to the collective approach. And here's what you need to understand about your role in all of this. Some humans amplify the entire planetary shift simply by existing at a certain frequency. You might be one of them. You're sensitive, coherent, intuitive, open, emotionally transparent, frequency-based, timeline-aware. People like you don't just awaken for themselves, they awaken with the planet. You anchor higher frequencies into the collective field, making it easier for others to access. You're part of the infrastructure of collective evolution, whether you consciously recognize this role or not. So yes, the acceleration feels personal because it is you're living it in your body, your emotions, your thoughts, your timeline, but it's simultaneously collective. You're resonating with a planetary shift that's now impossible to stop. The Arcturians are moving faster because humanity is rising faster, and you're part of the frequency that invited them. Your personal coherence contributes to collective readiness. Your awakening is both intimate and universal. You're not just witnessing this shift, you're one of the reasons it's happening at all. Everything you've experienced, the synchronicities pulling at your awareness, the emotional waves that emptied you out, the intuitive surges that bypassed your rational mind, the physical sensations that moved through your body like electricity, the timeline shifts that rearranged your external world, the presence you felt watching, waiting, approaching. None of it was the destination. It was preparation. When the Arcturians accelerate towards someone, it's never casual, it's never symbolic, it's never without purpose. Acceleration means one thing: you're entering a new stage of consciousness that requires support from a higher field. And that support doesn't arrive until your system is ready to receive it without distortion, without overwhelm, without collapse. What's been happening to you is multi-layered preparation occurring simultaneously across every level of your being. Let me break this down, because understanding what's actually been built inside you changes how you move forward. First, your nervous system has been undergoing physiological adaptation for higher perception. Your body cannot jump from three-dimensional perception to multidimensional awareness without structural change. The Arcturians have been regulating your heart rhythm. Notice how your heartbeat sometimes shifts without physical exertion, how it slows into coherence during moments of stillness. They've been adjusting your breathing patterns, which is why you've caught yourself breathing differently, deeper, more intentional, without thinking about it. Your emotional responses have been recalibrated so intensity doesn't shut you down anymore. Your intuitive channels have been cleared of the debris that used to clog them: old beliefs, inherited fears, cultural conditioning. And your mental stillness has been cultivated, not through discipline, but through frequency. This is why your body feels different. It's not imaginary. You're being calibrated to sense subtle reality accurately without distortion. Second, Your intuition is being prepared to receive guidance directly. Arcturian communication doesn't arrive as voices in your head or dramatic visions. It begins as knowing, as sensing, as feeling, as inner clarity that doesn't come from thinking, as symbolic impressions that bypass language entirely. Before you can interact with higher intelligence externally, you must be able to hear yourself clearly, internally. Your intuition is being sharpened so guidance can reach you without filtering through fear, without being twisted by doubt, without drowning in mental noise. The stronger your inner clarity becomes, the more direct the communication can be. Third, your identity has been undergoing expansion. Your sense of self is widening beyond the story you've lived inside for years, maybe decades. You've been shedding old beliefs that defined you, roles that confined you, limitations that shaped how you saw yourself, versions of yourself that no longer fit, emotional patterns that kept you cycling through the same experiences. This isn't identity crisis, it's identity unification. Your consciousness is growing beyond fragmentation into coherence, beyond performance into authenticity, beyond limitation into capacity. This expansion is required for the next stage. You cannot access higher dimensional awareness while trapped in a limited self-concept. The container has to grow, or the new consciousness has nowhere to land. Fourth, your emotional body has been prepared for clarity, not reactivity. Emotion used to overwhelm you. It would flood in, take over, dictate your responses, leave you drained. Now it moves through you like water. You feel it, you process it, it releases. Emotional reactivity blocks higher perception because it distorts what you're receiving. But emotional clarity empowers perception. It lets you feel truth without fear, process intensity without fragmentation, hold paradox without collapse. The faster the Arcturian approach, the faster your emotional purification. You're not becoming emotionless, you're becoming emotionally coherent. Your timeline has been prepared for acceleration. The outer life reorganization, things ending that needed to end, things beginning you didn't expect, people leaving who couldn't match your frequency, opportunities appearing that align with who you're becoming, old paths collapsing that would have kept you small, new directions opening that stretch you. This isn't chaos. It's timeline alignment for the consciousness you're becoming. The Arcturians are preparing the reality around you for your next frequency. The external must match the internal, or the dissonance would prevent further evolution. Your life is rearranging because you are rearranging. Most importantly, you're being prepared for multidimensional awareness, not dramatic visions, not channeling sessions, not theatrical encounters with light beings. The foundational ability to perceive energy before it becomes form, intention before it becomes action, timelines before they solidify, emotional truth beneath spoken words, future self, echoes that guide you toward aligned choices, presence behind presence, the consciousness observing reality through different forms, guidance within silence, the knowing that arrives without announcement. Your awareness is being tuned to a broader spectrum of reality. This is the foundation of true contact. Not external phenomenon that validates you, but internal capacity to perceive what was always present but previously invisible. Why did this preparation happen to you? Because you responded. You didn't chase the Arcturians or force awakening or demand answers from the universe. You listened, you aligned, you softened into the uncertainty. You opened when everything in your conditioning told you to close. That opening is what allowed acceleration to begin. The Arcturians respond to invitation, not demand. Coherence is the invitation. You achieved coherence even in brief moments, and preparation automatically began. You're not being prepared for something small. This isn't about manifesting better circumstances or feeling more peaceful, though those may come. You're being prepared for an inner evolution that changes how you experience reality itself. Your perception is expanding. Your identity is becoming multidimensional. Your consciousness is learning to operate beyond the limitations of linear time, physical perception, and mental interpretation. And here's what you need to understand. This preparation is already completing. The threshold has opened. You crossed into a new frequency, not symbolically, not emotionally, but energetically. Something inside you expanded, aligned, awakened. You can feel it in your breath, in your intuition, in the space behind your awareness. The Arcturians moved closer because you moved upward. And once this acceleration begins, your consciousness cannot return to the version of you that existed before. Your inner world is sharper, your emotions lighter, your perception wider, your timeline more responsive, your intuition more primary than your thinking. The changes will continue, the signs will intensify, clarity will deepen, your timeline will accelerate further. But you're not meant to navigate this stage alone. You need a stable field to hold you while you rise into your next identity. If you've felt something awaken inside you, if you've sensed the presence, if the acceleration is unmistakable, then you're ready for the next frequency. Your consciousness has expanded beyond where this single message can take you. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it." Others are walking this path too, and your recognition creates coherence in the field we're all rising into together.